What's up, guys? Welcome to drumroll Books to Business. We just went under a new rebrand here.
Because everybody was having difficulties connecting the dots to your voice to the world, which meant, originally was sharing your voice, building your business using books. And we did a lot of testing, and people wanted the best business ideas from the best business books.
Yeah, that's simple.
Eddie and I used a little of our own recipe, eating at our own restaurant, so to speak. And Cognitive Fluency is a short title to the podcast. Very easy to understand. We're going to use books to help you build your business.
Yeah, it was awesome. It took a long time. You're always looking to cut away.
Yeah.
And you have a really good point, and something that we should probably emphasize is you got to test and you got to look at the data, and helped us draw our conclusion. So I was pretty happy with it.
Came off an Instagram story post.
Yeah, the survey.
We were doing posts on Instagram trying to get people to look at the podcast, and the podcast numbers are going really well. I'd like to see more reviews, and I'd like to see more shares, but the people that are watching are coming back, and our views are up, and we're climbing the charts, and we're excited about that. But when we posted best business ideas from books and the concept of using books to build your business, that is the one that hit by a mile, like 10x the next closest one.
Yeah.
Sharing your voice is a big part of our message and helping people do that, and it's a big part of business, but having things simple to get somebody into our ecosystem is we use books to help you build your business.
Yeah. Number one rule. Content's not going to change. Just how you talk about it, how you communicate it. It's got to be clarity.
Especially if you can't leave the house. Okay?
That's right.
Because we have a captive audience now.
We're stuck inside.
Eddie and I were just talking about how our lives aren't changing much because of the way we structured our lifestyle and our business. This message of books to business is how to build your lifestyle, your ideal lifestyle, and have your business be around it. And ours was, when we were talking last year at the pier, I want to help people build their business talking about books and doing consulting, ideally digitally and virtually. And guess what? People can't even leave their houses now for the most part. They're not supposed to be out. I'm consulting with a company up in Boston, and these are financial advisors that used to get in their cars and drive to see people get out of their cars, get into their houses if they were there, and sometimes they're not, and talk to them face to face. Now they have to do it virtually.
Right.
Think about it. How much has your life changed in the last month?
Work-wise, virtually zero. Because most of my creation is done inside. And you can talk on the phone, you can consult over the phone. All these things are done virtually, and we've, worked hard to set it up that way.
You can't get any. You don't need hand sanitizer or extra toilet paper, do you?
No, I'm good. I'm rocking and rolling.
But you're not out. We're not out and about right now. We're just talking. Imagine, though, this is my point. Imagine if this became a permanent situation, like a year or 6 months. How would you operate? How would you adjust to make a good living?
That's a good question. There's a saying, if you don't make a change, sometimes life makes it for you. There's a lot of people are going to be forced to make, not necessarily because of this. This could be, fixed or resolved in a month, 2 months. But, it's a very valid question. There's benefits and there's advantages to setting up your entrepreneurial pursuits, your business on your own terms, making it more conducive to the world we live in nowadays. Mm-hmm. And this is a perfect example.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna change at some point. You might as well do it under your terms. Because think about it: if you wanted to go into a world, like if you're a travel agent or a bartender, or you're in a restaurant, or you're selling food to restaurants, or you're selling advertising to all restaurants are shutting down. You're out of business.
Yeah.
Through no fault of your own, your life's been disrupted because your business was the center of your life. And now more than ever, if you're ever considering creating a world for yourself where you're in control, where no one can tell you that you no longer have a job because of some exterior influence, this is the time to be looking at getting wisdom out of books. This one's about mental toughness, we're going to talk about in a second, or starting a business online, or changing how you operate and changing the field.
Yeah.
Swapping out the stadium.
That was one of the first conversations we had a year ago. Stadium swap.
Yeah.
Changing your conditions. So this guy right here, Mr. David Goggins, made a lot of changes in his life. Wasn't in a good place in many scenarios, and we'll talk about him diving into that pain, into that discomfort, changing his identity, his surroundings, taking life into his own hands so that he was able to create his own reality, make life work for him. A pretty extraordinary account of someone molding life into their own terms.
This guy is a whole nother level. Of course, it's another Navy SEAL, so I think there have been, within the last 3 or 4 books, we've had 2 SEALs, David Goggins and Jocko. But this book is a little different. This is about the battle you have with your own mind. And he was essentially someone that was heavily abused as a kid by his father, a lot of racial issues, and always at the bottom, and kept bringing himself up through his journey. And he has some principles that he shares and has gone, pretty popular. It's a great book, millions of followers, and great principles that you can use in your life. And some of it will be repeated principles from other books.
Yeah.
That's what I love about books, when the evidence keeps presenting itself. It's just reinforcement of an idea we heard earlier.
Yeah, you see a lot of overlap, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. What would you say, maybe to start it off, like the main theme or the main point for anyone that's never read it, thinking about it, maybe someone wants a recap. If you had to give them like a 101, what would you say? This book is about X.
It's about conditioning your mind to always accept reality and deal with it, not to accept reality as your future. It's accept the circumstances of reality and build a plan to get past it and endure.
Yeah. Yep.
Using your mental abilities without having to take a pill, without having to get on an airplane or go to a seminar. You have the tools that you need right now to be better than you currently are, and you can do that over time. I love how he wasn't anything special. He couldn't read. He had disabilities. He had physical, issues and limitations, and all of a sudden he rises up.
Yeah.
And then he falls, and he rises up. He did it 3 or 4 times. Being real. I think that's a big thing. The truth hurts is one of the chapters.
He's got like a no nonsense.
Yeah.
There's a really cool. God, I don't remember if it was in the podcast or in the actual book itself, but in the audiobook, it's in there. He talks about being at the gym. Someone comes up and says, I'm so inspired by you. I want to do a 50 meter or 50 mile run. Any tips? What should I do? How do I start? And he just goes, sign up. What are you doing?
Right.
You sign up. And this is a theme that it's been in a lot of our books. Weintraub, a lot of these guys, you commit and you work backwards.
Right.
Because if you keep planning and wait for the perfect moment, we all know this, it never comes.
Yeah.
So that's his big thing,
Yeah, the glass ceiling in your own brain, whatever story you tell yourself. I always say if you don't have a story for yourself, the world will have one for you. You are the architect of your own story, and a lot of people that think that we're not capable of things. He says we are operating on about 40% of our capability when we think we're at 100%. And there's a process to keep pushing yourself. And he has some interesting techniques that he uses. His principles. If you get the book, they're and more specifically, if you get the book on audio, it's done in a very unique way. It's a book reading with him being interviewed after each chapter, like almost a podcast.
Yeah.
It's really interesting technology that they kind of combined, podcasting and audible books.
Really cool. I wonder how many people will do that after hearing. Because it's a really cool medium. I'm sure it'll get.
It's the best one. I'm going to do my audio version. I want to do it in the same model.
Yeah.
So you can talk about it, because a lot has happened since I wrote that book. And I'm sure if he redid this podcast version of the book, hasn't changed, obviously, but I'm sure his commentary on each chapter changes because your life changes. What did you think about the book? What did you summarize this book?
I agreed wholeheartedly with what you said, doing the difficult thing. I thought a big theme was identity and how, you follow through on who you believe you are. Mm-hmm. And so you can see throughout the book, at the beginning where he's sort of, when he's cleaning, or he's, what do you call it? Exterminator?
Yeah, he's an exterminator, yeah.
Yeah, and he pretty much views himself as a loser, and he goes home and he eats and he's obese, and you see throughout the book, as his mind becomes more calloused and he starts growing as a person, his identity changed, and he literally starts seeing himself as a badass and this guy that can take anything on. And so that to me was like, it really resonated the most. It's like what you see yourself as, you follow through on. Yep. That's part A, and part B is, well, you gotta bring it out of yourself too.
Right.
You know, you gotta put yourself in a position to jump into that new suit, that new clothes, wear those new shoes, metaphorically, of course. But yeah.
Yeah. He always looked for a little bit more on the tank. You know, he had that mistake learner's high. He almost, once he thought he was at the brink of failure, he always, whether he was in the Navy SEALs or at BUDS, which was the basic underwater demolition seal. That's what it stands for. It was in the book. Remember last week we didn't know what it was?
Yeah.
And you think you're about ready to quit, and then he goes, not only doesn't quit, but he gets a whole nother level, and he calls it taking souls. Yeah. When everyone else is done, and you somehow, get another level. I saw it in a hot dog eating contest once with Jimmy Chitwich. That guy, Joey Chestnut, he's eating hot dogs, right?
I don't know.
And he has on like 70 hot dogs.
Regardless, that's an amazing transition.
I know. I just remember it. He gets another plate. He starts eating hot dogs. The other 4 people are just, that's it. Like imagine that. You're just full beyond full, and you think you won, and this guy orders another plate. Like that's what he did. And he did it in boat racing. He did it in running. He did it in a lot of things. But it is about that. It's about reaching deeper than you ever thought was. Being hard.
Yeah. That's the Navy SEAL term, hard.
And taking like a beating. If you've taken a beating, he basically says it was a gift. It calluses your body and your mind for the bigger beating that's coming. And then the beatings are never going to stop coming. Yeah. And it's okay. He likes them.
He likes them. They make him grow. And you touched on the 40% rule briefly, but that's kind of the idea, as he goes through his whole life. BUDS, it's, obviously very challenging. He's run ultras. He does all these things. And just a simple principle. When you are, when your mind's saying stop, you've exhausted all your capability, but you're done. Once you hit that point, you're at 40% of your maximum capacity. So that means you have 60% left once your mind starts telling you that you're done or you're tired. Yeah. And that alone speaks. I mean, he's done. He does amazing things just because why not? Right? He going into BUDS. You remember the part when he's like, they're like, you need to lose 100 pounds in 3 months.
Right.
He just does it. Just does it because he doesn't ask himself, why not? He doesn't create obstacles. He just says, look, here's the goal, and I'm going to do it. And amazing feat after amazing feat because why not?
Yeah, he had obviously a big why. He wanted to become, he had a dream in his head. He wanted to become that. And that was a very, the one thing about the military is they're very specific and particular about requirements. Like if you're either in or out.
Yeah.
And it was at this weight level. He had to be 241, whatever. No, 197. He had to lose 106 pounds because he had to get down to 197, and he was almost 300 or over. And that was the weight. So he put that in as a goal, 3 months, and he had to pass a test. So he had another goal he had to concurrently do, a test that he never passed before. He had to pass that test. And life is no different than that. Like you have a goal. I mean, in your own world, what's a goal? I mean, you got to pay your bills at a certain level, right?
Right.
So you got to support your business. If you're doing that, you got to pay employees. So that's the baseline goal. Imagine if you're only operating at 40%, but you think it's 100%.
Right. It never is.
Yeah, it isn't. And like businesses that are doing $1 million can do $3 million.
Yeah.
When that becomes a new baseline, once you make your adjustments, everything adjusts back. And the body's no different. The body and the mind's no different, what you can achieve.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. Mental callousness. So the abuse that you've taken is a gift.
Yeah.
You're not a victim. You're a hero. And callousing the hero, that warrior that's been tested versus that one that's never been tested. Mm-hmm. And you always can get a little bit better trying to improve on your last record. He does it in all his journey.
When you take that concept, like piecemealing it, right? Because I feel like that's an incredible concept. The fact that you can always be doing more. You're always, when you think you're maxed out, you're at 40%, whatever. Combined with Jocko's discipline equals freedom. right? That helps you unlock the concept that Goggins speaks about. It's almost like they go hand in hand. I'm thinking from like a business perspective, right? You just mentioned, you're operating at whatever. You can be doing more. How? Well, you pull some tools from Jocko's book, and the discipline and the structure allows you to then increase that capacity. I just like the way that works together.
Jobs did it too when he talked about a project. If you dare give Jobs a deadline, he said, "Oh, we'll have it done in 2 weeks." Like, you just made the world's biggest mistake, because that guy's about ready to ask you to have it done in 3 days.
Yeah,
because they'll say what could be done in 2 weeks can be done in a week. And then if you agree to the week, he'll say, "Well, have you ever done anything in 3 or 4 days that was done in a week?" And he'll keep pushing and pushing and pushing. That's what great leaders do.
Yeah,
they push. I'm not a runner. You're a runner, but he references on 3 or 4 different occasions the sympathetic nervous system, which is that intrinsic gear. It's not seen. It's just something that happens in your mind, and it creates another level of adrenaline, or it's a burst. And people get it. You see, little kids flip over cars when their parents are under the car. There's been lots of examples of that throughout time.
Right.
Like, how did that person do that? Or how did someone live? Remember the guy that lived in the cave with his arm in there? He lived an extra, 2 weeks.
Oh, he sawed his arm off.
Yeah. I mean, that's the sympathetic nervous system. But as you're a runner, it's pretty common in running, isn't it? I mean, you're out of juice.
Yeah.
Second wind, they call it a little bit.
Well, that's part of that's not like a maybe. That is the sport. It's like, who can do more when they feel like, the world's falling down around them. So, no one runs a marathon and feels good. And that's part of why I feel like I resonated with that so well. It's also why I always talk about running, in my content. It's because there's a direct correlation. It's not even a stretch. It's the same principle. Mm-hmm. When you're running, if you want to win, you run into pain. When you're in business, if you want to succeed, you do the uncomfortable thing. You do what's scary. And everything. That's what it is. When I used to run around the Charles River, and I think I made a video about this, like the first year I was on YouTube before I even launched a lot of what I have going on now. And it was like, I used to play this game where, as I'm running around the city, I would count. And these runners that I'm talking about, they're completely oblivious to what I'm doing, obviously. Yeah. And should be. They should be, who cares, right? But the thing is, I just got so jacked up by counting the number of runners that I passed.
Right.
When I was running around the Charles River, and it was like this big thing to me, and it was like I never wanted to get past. Just period. And it no consequence, but it made me run harder. And for that, that little takeaway was worth it for me.
You made a game out of it.
I made a game out of it.
Something that sucked into a game. I had a call last week from a dear friend I've known my whole life, and she knows a little bit about my medical journey, and she has a healthcare scare, a brain condition, and so which is going to make her. They're making her do an MRI. So if you've ever been in an MRI machine, you're in a tube, and even if there's a little bit of room and you're smaller, they make it smaller so the MRI machine's legitimately, it's almost you can touch it with your nose, and she's claustrophobic, so she was crying and upset about that. Now, I was pretty big when I had to do many MRIs, and I had a similar situation when you talked about counting the runners. Like, I was having these panic attacks, almost like they got to pull you out, like you're going to flip out. And I started counting all the cities I've been in. I think I ended up getting way over 150, but I just kept counting them.
Just to keep the mind
so I told her, just to create a game out of it, count the restaurants you've been in, or, it's just a tool, and, it never ends. You make a game out of something bad. And that's what he did with with his running and stuff. They had he was when Marcus Luttrell I think it was Marcus Luttrell's group got killed. 2 of them got killed, or 3 of them got killed out of the 4 for the Lone Survivor movie was made of it. They all were SEALs together. When he got killed, Goggins wanted to do a fundraiser for the Wounded Warrior Foundation, I believe it was. And to do that, he was going to run this ultra marathon. That's how he got into ultras, which are 100 miles, right, in 24 hours. So he had never run one before. And one was up in 3 days, and to qualify for the one he wanted to run in, the guy asked him. He said, "Well, why don't you go ahead and run in that one?" And he had never run in one before, and with no preparation, that no one's ever done this. He not only did it but finished, and he placed well. and he was the only person to ever do that. Like he made a game out of it.
Yeah.
And he was out of gas. He was out of gas relatively quickly in that one.
Is that the one around the track when he had that, like his body shut down?
He brought Ritz crackers and like instead of bringing water and electrolytes and stuff and potassium, he brought like Ritz crackers.
Yeah, yeah.
and chocolate milk or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it was, but it was kind of a joke.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So he does
He's
that.
a badass.
Yeah,
Dude.
exactly.
Nobody does that, And then he's one of the best ultra runners in the world now.
He does that, and then imagine being the guy that goes up to him in the gym and says, "So what should I do to prepare?" Like you don't. You just do it.
I love the book starts. One of my favorite lines. He says, "Once you take your first breath, you are eligible to die, but you're also eligible to become the ultimate warrior."
Yeah.
And he has that famous Heraclitus quote that we had, of men on the battlefield. Of the 100 people there, he said 10 don't belong at all. 80 are targets, just targets. 9 are fighters and they make the fight, and then the 1 is the warrior.
Yeah, which he is certainly the one.
Yeah, that brings everybody home. So you can become the warrior once you take your first breath. It's completely up to you.
Right.
And it's your interpretation on these events that you get. You get beat down, you get up. You were broke growing up, good. All these things are all gifts that you get, because when real things hit, and this is nothing. Like this is relatively nothing. What's going on in our world right now? It's not a lot. Our grandparents went to war for 2 and 3 years.
Our generation.
We got to sit home on our
nothing.
computers and we're pissed off that we don't get takeout. It's not. Yeah, this is nothing yet.
It's a different world. I always think about that. Like we are so sheltered, it's particularly in the West.
Yeah.
Have it so good, have it so easy. We have no idea, particularly prior to this 250-year experiment, with in the United States democracy. Like we think everything is like this, and so we find little intricacies to complain about, and it's like, dude, no. And you read this, like,
Yeah.
To your point, it makes you. If your biggest complaint is that your Starbucks coffee had too much cream in it, you're in for a rude awakening at some point.
Yeah,
not to be the pragmatist over here, but that's just the reality.
I think it's a good point. Like, what are you prepared to do right now if this goes bad? How tough are you? Could you live on less food? Could you live on less money? Could you live on less? Could you live without your house? I mean, the economy is doing what it's doing. It's going to do what it does, and something's going to happen. You got to be prepared for what's going to come. Tough.
Yeah.
This book's about being tough, being ready, hard.
Yeah. Because to answer your question, yes, you can do all those things. It's just, have you positioned your mind to,
Right.
Yeah. Also, fun fact, ultramarathon, anything over 26.2.
Oh, it's not the 100.
It is, but anything over.
Oh, he did one. He said 200 in 3 days.
Yeah.
200 miles, 205 miles in 3 days.
I don't remember.
There's one that my friend ran. He's a senator in Texas, state senator. 7 continents. He did one on every continent.
Oh, my God.
Like a month. I think it might have been, I don't know if it was 7 days, but it was wild.
Imagine the rush of doing something like that.
He finished, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, his name's Patrick Fallon. He because I saw him, on Facebook. I grew up with Pat my whole life. He actually walked on to Notre Dame as a walk-on, like Rudy did. Like he wasn't.
Oh, yeah?
He did. And he actually had an interaction with Rudy. I think they went into business together. But now he's a state senator in Texas. And he gets like 60,000 votes. It's not like an election where I come from in New Hampshire where the governor wins at 40,000. Like it's a legitimate deal. But he did. I guess that's a form of ultra, right?
Yeah.
Badass.
Yeah.
Impressive. What the
cool.
body can do.
What else do we got? Anything? What about you, Steve? I know you read it too. Any topics you feel like we haven't covered yet?
One thing I really liked that he said that stuck with me was, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. Like anything he did, he thought of it that way, and I like that and he mentioned it, the way he said it, he put it really well, was you ask somebody how they're doing, they're saying, good, same old, and he's like, there's no same old, and if you are feeling that, then you're getting worse. So he was like constantly getting better. And then it also reminded me within that phrase, same sentiment was relentless. It was like he was talked about being uncommon amongst the uncommon. So
Oh, I loved that.
yeah,
quote.
he was amongst the SEALs, and he's like, I'm gonna do the most of this. And then he ran the one that he signed up for in 3 days. He was, like you said, he was like incapacitated, could barely finish it. And then when he finished the race, did all 100 miles. He did one more lap for 1 more mile. So he did like 101 miles.
Savage.
Yeah,
But he also did a stint with Delta and the other special forces groups too, didn't he? Didn't he just start
went to
joining the other ones?
Yeah, he
Just
went to
to-
like the Army Rangers.
Yeah, he sought it out. Like
yeah,
this
it was
crazy level of insanity. I think, I'm pretty sure he was unliked a
Yeah.
lot of times, and he called himself out on it.
Yeah.
Like he was starting to be an asshole.
I think it was, so he did the Army Rangers, and then he knew the creed like better
Yeah.
than the people there.
Right.
They tried to call him out, and then when he started leading little platoons, but he would push people thinking they're like him, and like,
Yeah.
this is, if you're a Navy SEAL, if you're in this place, you want to live to this level, and people are like, dude, you're killing these people, and then he realized like not everybody wants to kill themselves like doing this. That was,
Yeah, there's some kind of fine line of insanity,
Yeah.
right? Where he's-
Depends who you ask.
Well, he almost died a few different times.
that's what
You
stuck
know?
out to me, is that
Danger.
like you never stop, you keep achieving more. He's like a best of the best, but at some point like his body's breaking down. There was just so many things that
Speaking of, that was a huge point. I thought, because as a runner, I've always had injuries. Remember the knot on his head?
yes
Yeah.
And his body's breaking down, and literally he just stretches, and
Yeah.
things start. And now he took it to extreme and did what, like 2 or 3 hours of stretching a day?
dude, like 12 I think.
Oh, was it something that outrageous?
He went crazy.
Yeah, so he just started stretching like a madman, but like his symptoms started disappearing,
Yeah.
which was amazing.
Well, yeah, that part, what I liked about that is that he had like the medical mystery. They couldn't figure out what happened, so he's laying there and he's like at peace. Like he finally accepted all his. He's like, I did it. I did all these things. Look where I came. And he was like at peace. And he talks about being at peace. And then when he was laying there, he started to like kind of feel his body more. And that's when he felt like the knots in his neck, knots in his hips. And you remember the guy from some class that taught him about stretching. And he's like, I don't need stretching. Like, it's always, if I had injuries, like you said, push right through it. If I have this, I'll deal with it. If I have broken legs, like I'll tape them up and run with them. But then he's like, he tried stretching and then he couldn't even stretch. He was like sitting and he couldn't even sit in a position, did it for hours and more, and then it loosened him up.
Right.
It was crazy.
What's good about that idea, like something's wrong, and you experiment with what works. You don't necessarily have to go. What worked for him once didn't work, right? And there's modalities out there that could solve problems. I mean, they're not always the most obvious. I mean, who would know that a guy like that with that type of body would stretch his way out of a. Like he thought he was going to be crippled.
Yeah.
That was he was like literally he didn't run for a little while and just stretching.
Yeah.
A little bit, it sounds like a little bit of meditation. You know, like sometimes that's just switching that switch over is a transformation itself, a change.
Yeah. That was an amazing thing. What was that quote though? Was it uncommon against uncommon men?
Yeah.
Amongst
uncommon, yeah.
Yeah, like he's like the best of the best.
Oh man.
Uncommon around
I also really like the quote when he said,
King of Kings type thing.
he said, it takes 20 years to get 20 years of experience. Because it's like there's no shortcuts. And if like you have to, all the things he learned, it took all those hardships to do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
There isn't a shortcut.
There isn't.
The only thing is certain is waiting sucks. Just don't wait. Get going with something if you want to do it. If it does take 20 years and that's real, every year you don't do it, you're 20 more years away.
Can't improve upon steps you haven't taken, right?
Right.
Yeah. That said, I mean, it's been a big learning point for me. Like the biggest steps I've taken forward in my professional career are because of efficiencies that I've taken, which isn't a shortcut. That's being smarter. But yeah, like realizing like, oh my God, I'm going the long way home on a lot of these things.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to just production capabilities and scaling and just being more efficient with what you're doing. So they're two different things. I just want to call that out.
Yeah, one's efficiency. There's others like you can't like art takes the time art takes, I think.
True.
You can't like I think I've overheard someone talk to you about your content, right? He said, get out more or less. You fought with that sucker.
That's been the bane of my existence. How do you scale this stuff, right? Unless you're repurposing or having someone else write it.
Right.
But that's just not my brand.
Pound for pound, like you lose your title.
Yeah.
It's all organic, homemade stuff.
That's it, man. That's it.
Could you imagine if you could, my grandmother made the apple pie, and it broke my heart when I found out she had the fake pie crust. My mother told me later. I was like, come on, man.
Just tell you last week. Terrence, I got something to tell you.
It was recently. Yeah, it wasn't like when we're eating it. What was it called? The Pillsbury rolled up pie crust. My grandmother did that with the apples in the cans. What is up with that?
Just repress it, block it back.
I don't care. It still tasted good. I think I created the environment that it tastes good. Happy times, right?
That's
comfort food.
Another thing you could talk about through business, like another application, was that he says people have these, when he does his workout, people say like, oh, you have a meeting at 6 a.m. He's like, I usually wake up at 5 a.m. to do my workout. He's like, okay, so now I wake up at 4. Like he says these schedules dictate what he does with his day, and people are like, I can't do it because this came up. It's like, no, the schedule tells you how to schedule your day. It doesn't dictate your schedule. Like it doesn't change it changes your schedule, but it's not like you're a victim to it. Now you just adjust.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I love that a lot.
Yeah, you got to find the time, right? Everyone's trying to find more time. There's time in your day. You can get up a little earlier, but you waste a lot of time.
You had an amazing point last week. If you own a cell phone, you can make time in your day, period, because you're wasting an exorbitant amount of time on that
Terrible,
thing, no matter who you are.
You got to put it in the coffin.
Put it in the coffin. Yeah,
You know
that's
what a
what we
coffin
did.
is? It's like, I tell my kids that put your phone in the coffin when you're driving, and they're going to put you in a coffin. Like you got to put it in the deck and close the damn thing. Those things are dangerous, but
It's one way to communicate
You
it.
can't. I know it's pretty hard, but that's the way it goes.
I like it.
But you're in charge of your time, and if you're disciplined about it, you could get up a little earlier. I mean, sleep's real important. That means you're trading sleep, but you got to do trade off.
He wouldn't care. He does not care if you're trading sleep for it.
No.
He just gets up and just does it again. 2 a.m. workout, crazy.
How old is that guy? Maybe 40?
He was 38 when he started to have those issues.
38.
He
So
thought
he's
his
probably
life was over.
45 now, you think?
I couldn't tell you.
I'll look it up.
It doesn't matter. But he's 40. Like time will tell what his body's going to do. I mean, what he's done to his body, who knows?
It's true.
He is 45 right
But
now.
if business application is there's power in failing. Failing is, to speak to Edison, it's eliminating one thing that doesn't work, getting closer to one thing that does work, and getting charged up when you find something that you're trying it doesn't work. Like we're doing these unique ads right now. We're going through. We had probably one of the biggest failures, I think, from a marketing perspective you can ever have. We put money into a lot of traffic. We got a shit ton of opt-ins, and nobody was buying the product.
Got punched in the nose. It happens.
But we got a lot of powerful information about that.
Right.
Like we're literally not even close to where we need to be. We eliminated that as an option instead of trying to make something work badly. We're just going to eliminate it and go turn the cannon somewhere else. The good news is we got a lot out of it. We know how to get someone to get that first domino down.
Exactly.
We got them into our ecosystem. We just got to get them into another place.
It was a good price for the lesson. I mean, it really was.
Yeah, well, totally. I mean, in failure, we got a big win.
And why do entrepreneurs always, like, there's power in the cliches, right? Why do entrepreneurs always talk about their obstacles and their losses? Because, like, if you look at life, and I'm going to talk about this in an upcoming video, like a game, which is, I think, how you should look at it, right? There's wins and there's losses. You can't have one without, I mean, they're just both going to happen. But the idea is, as you learn, you grow, and you improve, the wins become more consistent, more substantial, and something to build on. And the losses, at least in comparison, they're all, if you're pushing and you're being aggressive like you should be, there's always going to be some element of, like we just got our asses handed to us.
Right.
But that's par for the course. And so you literally can't have one without the other. Always remember that. It's the cost to get in the room is failure.
Right.
That's simple.
If you make a decision, he did this with his pull-up. He's a Guinness record holder for pull-ups.
Yeah.
I think he had 4,000 or something in 17 hours. If I'm not mistaken, it was around that. A lot.
A little over. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so he won. He lost twice. First time he lost was on the Good Morning America show, I believe it was, or the Today show. He lost live, got his teeth kicked in, and then he lost again because his hands kept bleeding. Every time he lost, he debriefed. And then the breakthrough that he makes, and I think this is true in anything, is he took himself off of the grid, and he says, "I'm going to win this. I don't care how long it takes. He took himself off the calendar. He didn't give himself a time limit. He just made a decision that this is mine and I'm getting it.
Yep.
If it takes 2 months, it'll be 2 months. If it takes 20 years from now, I'll have this record.
Yep.
And, you know, that was like deserving it. You deserve it. You're going to get it. Work hard towards it.
Set the goal, backfill.
Yeah, like the experiment doesn't end. Like life isn't an ending experiment. It's a never-ending experiment. And if you're getting better every day, so be it. If you're not getting better, so live with it.
Yeah.
Because that's going to happen.
It's beautiful. It's a nice time. And then maybe after this, Steve, we go right to the questions. But that ties into the theme of commitment. I mean, over and over and over again, he is so committed. It's like that same like do or die type thing. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to do it or I'm going to die trying, right? Like the great philosopher 50 Cent said. Shout out to Brian Breach. Yeah.
50 Cent.
Yeah, so... What do we got,
I didn't know
Stevie?
50 Cent was a philosopher.
No, that was a slide from Brian Breach's TED Talk.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, no. It was I don't know, something like that. I'm recycling it from somewhere.
No, that was great. A great philosopher, 50 Cent.
I have a question here from Daniel. It says, what do you think about him saying exceeding God's expectations? Do you guys remember that part? It was towards the end of the book. He said God has a list for him.
What's the context?
It's so just like he says there's like for example in the end of the book he talks about there's a list God has and it's what he could have done with his life and he doesn't want to regret not living up to his full potential, but he wants to exceed that list. And that's just what the question says. What do you think about your thoughts on him trying to exceed the higher powers' expectations? Is there because it plays into that no finish line?
Yeah.
There's no finish line if you're ever content. Like that's why it stood out to me.
Yeah, that's the same as you probably don't even know this anymore. Because there used to be dog racing, like greyhounds used to race around the track, and they'd race a rabbit. They'd never let the dog catch the rabbit. If the dog ever caught the rabbit, it would know that the rabbit's not real. So the greyhounds would just run, and the rabbit would be on a car with a pole and be a rabbit on there, like a stuffed animal, and they'd run. And at the last second at the finish line, they'd scoop the greyhound rabbit, and the greyhounds would run. Life is like that. So maybe he meant that there is no such thing. Like if God stopped the race, he's still running. The guy was just a unique guy like that.
Yeah.
Like imagine that if you had a bigger goal than what God gave you.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think he's just being hyperbolic. Like,
I don't specifically remember that part. Do you?
No.
I get it though. I mean, I could see him saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What stood out to me was that when he talks about exceeding that expectation, like it's almost like if you accept that there's no finish line and that you're exceeding anything you ever thought possible, you get over that instead of like waiting, like, okay, maybe this is where I'm done. This is where I'm done. You kind of just like get out of that race completely. And
implying that God provides a finish line and then he, as a human, is surpassing it.
He was just insane in the fact that it stood out to me because when he said that in the book, he's like, God made this list. Like if he stayed that 300-pound fat person and he stayed being the exterminator and he didn't push himself and God's like, this could have been your life. You could have been a Navy SEAL who ran ultra marathons. He that's regret. And then he's like, so that's like puts the fear in me to like push myself to the potential. Then him being like the unique person he is, he's like, I want to even exceed whatever list he has for me as like a metaphor. And he's just like, I'm gonna make him like write things as I'm living.
Yeah.
And so it was more about the question about like, why is there no finish line? What is that like? What are your thoughts on the no finish line? And I think that's what it is.
Gotcha.
Let me see here.
I like the, when he talked about being fat, like the truth, being real about it, like brutal reality. And I think Ryan Holiday talked about a stoic is always see things as they really are. And that accountability mirror where you're sticking the tabs on the mirror every morning and looking at your own truth. You're overweight, you're lazy, you're sleeping in too much. All the things you call yourself out on, you stick them on the mirror. Be better.
As we go week by week and we read books, like it always feels like the old ones with time sort of go away and the new ones. Yeah. That one for me is still right up top. Every week I'm realizing more and more how much I love that book.
Which one?
Obstacles Away.
Oh, it's fantastic book.
So good. It's so good.
It's a 2,000 or 3,000 year old principles that are basically in this contemporary book. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
Like, see things as they really are. The Stoic does that. And Good to Great, which we're doing in a few weeks, I believe, Jim Collins has something that Admiral Stockdale always said when he was in prison in Hanoi in Vietnam. It was called the Hanoi Hilton, that the reason he lived is he endured. He knew that he would have to endure, that all things that are lit need to be burnt to endure. Like,
What do you mean by that?
like for a book to light, it needs to be burnt, and that's painful.
Oh, I see.
The pain
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the burning is the pain to get lit. So he when he was getting tortured, he knew that he's going to shine as a light, but he's going to be burnt.
Gotcha.
And he accepted that brutal reality. Like others said, "I'll be home for Christmas," and they died of a broken heart.
Gotcha.
Like these principles keep coming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, being truthful.
All right, I got another one here from Mark. Says he pushes through a lot of physical pain. What's the biggest pain you felt in business?
I think swinging and missing sucks. I mean, when you, especially like campaign-based stuff, like, when you have a new rollout or something that, you invest a lot of strategy into, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and then you have, the release date and it doesn't do as well as it's supposed to. I mean, that's happened a few times, and it's just, it's a temporary thing. But yeah, it's kind of picking up the pieces, throwing it back against the wall. What would you say?
I think it's when you find yourself in a place that you didn't prepare for, and you're powerless because of the environment that you didn't see coming. You missed an opportunity, or you got sidetracked with something.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are feeling that right now, where if they're in an industry that they could have gotten out of, right, and they're just stuck. Now they're back to zero when they may have had contingencies. You got to look at contingencies in a business environment. So it sucks when everyone else is making money and you missed the mark because you didn't prepare for that. You didn't dig your well when you were thirsty.
When you weren't thirsty.
You didn't dig your well when you weren't thirsty.
There you go.
I got another one from Tomas. It says, you did Jocko's book, now David's book, both Navy SEALs. How can I apply these books even though I'm not planning or I'm not currently a Navy SEAL?
Well, the principles and the reason the books relate so well to everyone else is that they transcend that specific situation, right? It's like there's only a few universal principles that apply to everything. And so the thing about, hopefully I'm not getting too deep here, but like the context of storytelling is what's exciting, because we hear about this guy that's done so many amazing things in the military and we're intrigued. And so then we can, it really emphasizes the main points that we can apply to us. But it's the same exact concepts. Like we were talking about earlier, it's you embrace discomfort, you become stronger. You set a goal for yourself, you stay disciplined, you'll move towards that goal. And whether you're a Navy SEAL or whether you're creating a YouTube channel or a business or trying to, whatever it is you're doing, esports. That was a I don't know where I pulled that from, but the same concepts. And that's why it doesn't matter. You got to look beyond. I always laugh when people are like, can you do a video that has, that isn't pertaining to runners? And I'm like, just because the stock footage here is runners, that doesn't mean that the same concept isn't exactly what you need. Think big picture. Take the concept, apply it to yourself. So,
did you ever see a runner do a keynote? There was one guy who was on the bobsled team, did a keynote. I've seen every keynote. I saw one by Beck Weathers, who climbed Everest. And they're all like common people that did extraordinarily amazing things. Like Goggins and Jocko both became amazing, not only SEALs, but they endured, they pulled themselves up. And they did it with simple, proven principles.
exactly.
That anybody can do. And that's why these books sold millions of copies. And like karate is 7 moves. Like a grandmaster in karate, I know this. I know a couple people that are heavily involved. It's just 7 things that you just perfect. It's not 7,000 things. It's about doing 7 things 100,000 times, not 100,000 things 7 times. And that's when you become great. So if you look at any principles here, we're kind of talking to you about very similar principles that have been embedded in other books, and we're doing it with different stories to get your brain connected to it. So if it doesn't work for the Navy SEAL, perhaps it'll work for the Stoic, or perhaps it'll work for Steve Jobs. You know, we have Carmine Gallo coming on. We had a couple of psychiatrists last week and psychologists with the tools.
Yeah.
They're just different stories that are relaying these principles that over time have produced amazing results.
Exactly. And there was a good, when you said you were talking about people that do extraordinary things. When I was walking over here, I heard a quote that was like, there are no heroes. There are just people who willingly put themselves in, situations that allow them to be heroic. Ordinary people that make a decision.
Right.
That creates the quote unquote heroism that we talk about. And so another reason they're so impactful. Anyone can be David Goggins. Again, dude was over 300 pounds. He made a decision. What's your excuse? What's my excuse? We don't have one.
I mean, the blueprint he puts in place is just it's an algorithm that worked for him. You can add, delete, and modify that for yourself to get a result that you want to get. It might not be running ultra marathons. You might want to more model a Steve Jobs or Warren Buffett as an investor. I mean, who knows what you want to model? But these principles, you'll see them coming. They're big ideas. Mm-hmm. They're the best ones, curated from the best books, which is the reason we have this podcast. Like, we're trying to give you a lot of information in less time that you can use and weaponize for your own journey, your own business.
Exactly.
Or life.
Yeah.
Most of these things work in both.
Where's our next book? Oh, here we go.
Oh boy.
All right. So next week we are doing Principles by Ray Dalio, and we're going to finish up season 2 on that note. What do you think? You've delved into that book a little bit.
Yeah, I read it. It's an unbelievable book. He does principles for life and business, and you could switch the life and business parts of the books around. They will still work. But it's about he's a master of the algorithm. In fact, he puts his technology. He's a big investment manager and has a big firm with a unique way of managing money. Made him a billionaire. And he's one of the few companies that actually posts his recipe online. Like, you can literally copy it. These principles will change your life.
Yeah, I know Tony Robbins endorsed him in his latest book I read.
Yeah.
So I've heard his name bounced around. I'm excited to read it. So
Yeah, awesome.
should be a good one. All right, guys. Well, it's another week. One more book, and then we're
safe.
good. Stay safe. Yeah. What is it called?
Social distancing.
Social distancing. There we go.
It's not going to be too hard for some people.
Had to sneak that one in there. I've been social distancing my whole life.
You're really good at the social distancing.
Oh, God. All right, guys. Catch you next week.
All right.